One of the most recommended books on menopause is The M Word by Dr. Philippa Kaye. And Dr. Kaye is back with this brand new edition for 2023. So let's ask Dr. Kaye what we can expect to read in it. So welcome, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Now, why did you originally want to write a book about the menopause before we go on to talk about the latest updates?
So I wrote this book 2018-2019, the first edition, and it was born out of a need that I saw in my clinic every single week. I had women coming in, giving up work, giving up driving, thinking that they had dementia at 45, leaving their relationships with real mental health problems. And actually, most of it was related to the perimenopause and menopause. And the other group of people I had was women a little bit later, often in their 50s and 60s, who had absolutely lost their libido. Or were having really painful sex. And when I brought up the possibility that this might be related to the menopause, they were all gobsmacked. And it was clear to me how much education and empowerment was needed. And that is where the M Word came from.
And it's a fantastic book. I recommend it a lot to anyone that asks. And I wish it was a book I had when I was going through my own perimenopause journey at 2016. I probably wouldn't have needed to set up the Latte Lounge had I had it, but thank you for doing it anyway. Now, I'm lucky enough to have got my hands on this new edition, and I love, there's so much more in there, including a symptom checklist, which I think is really, really helpful. So listen, why did you feel it needed updating? And, you know, what will people find in this second edition that wasn't in the first one?
So book writing is a process, and publishing it takes time. So as I said, I wrote the first edition end of 2018, 2019, and it came out at the beginning of 2020. And since then, the menopause world has changed quite a lot. And the wonderful campaigning that people like the Latte Lounge do has really brought the menopause into the forefront of people's minds. But what that means is that they've got more questions and that they want more and more information. Plus, the political landscape has changed quite a lot. So there is a lot more in there about perhaps the more unusual symptoms of the menopause, or areas of the body like menopause in the mouth and menopause in the gastrointestinal system. There's a symptom tracker in there because, as you said, they're really useful to know what's working for you, what isn't working for you. And as well as a really, really practical guide as to what to do if there's an HRT shortage, and much more information about the questions that I got asked on social media and in the media every day about things like, well, I've got a spray, but how actually do I use it? Or I've got a gel, and when can I put on sun cream? So every question that you've ever asked me is answered in this new updated edition.
Which is absolutely brilliant. And you hit the nail on the head. The more we raise awareness about the menopause, the more questions it springs up. And even when, for example, women do perhaps get a prescription, say for HRT, which they didn't know they needed, but it perhaps is the answer to what they were looking for, they then have all these extra questions, like you've said, you know, how do I absorb it? How long can I be on it for it? My friend is on it, but she's on a different formulation. So, you know, it makes absolute sense to go into a bit more depth. Now, you touched on the campaigning work, which obviously you and I have met each other many times at these marches and awareness events. And obviously I've been campaigning myself for many years with the Make Menopause Matter campaign. So that, as you said, there is this sort of coming together, this sort of uprising of women and doctors and grassroots campaigners and politicians, which is brilliant. But what are your own personal reflections on how this political situation has changed, you know, for menopause awareness? And are you feeling optimistic about how much more information there is now around menopause, and that hopefully changes is a coming?
I think that change takes time. And I think that when we talk about women's health, we are fighting essentially a millennia of misogyny and sexism in medical research and in all kinds of areas. So change doesn't happen overnight. And we are still having to educate in lots of different cultures and lots of different groups about women's health, and trying to move away from women's health being shameful and from women being sexual beings as being shameful. And so I think there's a lot more work to be done that way. I think it's amazing that the government is beginning to listen. I think it's fantastic that we have our foot in the door. But the more research that we do about things like the impact of menopause in the workplace still show how much need there is. And when we talk about other issues like, for example, testosterone replacement, and how many women find that hugely helpful, but the guidance only talks about it in one area. And the reason because of that is because there isn't the research. And in order to have the research, you need to have the funding for the research. And in order to have the funding for the research, you need to recognize that there's a need for the research. And that's where we are. And that's point one, at recognizing the need. So whilst I think that there has been this powerful push, and I think that women feel far less alone, and I do think that they feel more empowered about their bodies and their choices, I do also think that there's a long way to go. But that doesn't mean that it isn't worth fighting for.
Good. I'm not sure how much more I've got in me, but I'll keep going. And you
behind.
yeah, you actually touched on testosterone as an example, and I know you go into that in both books. But just for those of you who are watching this, Dr. Kaye's written a fabulous article about testosterone, which you can find on our website, and we'll obviously share the links for that. So where can people find this latest edition? Sorry, it's a bit shiny. There we go. And yeah, where can they buy it and find out more about you as well?
So it's shiny because I'm a magpie and I like glittery things. And just to reassure everybody that there is a load of lifestyle information there, and other choices which aren't HRT. I don't have a particular agenda apart from finding what works for you. So all of that information is in there, and you will be able to find it from anywhere that you buy books, Amazon, Waterstones, anywhere and everywhere. And if you want to follow me, I'm at Dr. Philippa Kaye on Twitter and on Instagram. And I regularly post reels and videos full of what I hope is practical and useful advice. So please come find me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And that's an excellent point to end on, that everyone, no matter what your health or well-being concern is, should really make an informed joint decision on your own healthcare and well-being needs with a healthcare provider that you trust and know. And as you said, there's lots of lifestyle tips and nutrition advice in there too. So thank you very much. Good luck with this latest edition. And I hope everyone finds it a really helpful read. I certainly did.